They tried to label me a racist when they fired me. I compared radical Islamic terrorists to Nazis, and apparently somehow that offended somebody. There's a reason why ESPN is losing hundreds of thousands of subscribers a month, and very little of it has to do with the athletic events themselves. And here's the thing, Larry, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. They're a company. They're privately owned. They're allowed to be however they want to be. But I'm tired of the gutless people that are acting one way and speaking another. They fired me and claimed that they were firing me because they're a tolerant, inclusive group, and I'm not, which is actually the opposite of the truth. And if you follow, there's two stories at ESPN that are blowing me away. Sage is number one because apparently she had trouble with people burning buildings and violent Trump protests, and that seemed to be, I guess, a bad thing. And if you followed the tennis story about the tennis announcer who used the term, I've never heard it before, I don't know tennis, but one of the gentlemen that's one of the best tennis announcers in the world said Serena Williams was using guerrilla tactics in her tennis, which is apparently that's a tennis style that everybody uses. He's gone. But again, they are intolerant. They are racist. The thing that blew me away is how much of I bet you how much of a challenge it was for them to fire a black woman. If you listen to them, they're some of the most racist people in sports on that station. Stephen A. Smith being one of them. Tony Kornheiser. Tony Kornheiser compared ISIS to the Tea Party. And so, but again, that's their right as a company. I just find it amusing that they don't have the backbone and the guts to stand behind it. Let me tell you this: the only thing ESPN, first of all, I love Carl Ravitch and the guys I worked with on baseball tonight. But at the end of the day, ESPN, the only thing they have that you could possibly want is a live sports broadcast. Because if that's not the event you're looking for, you can find as good or better analysis of sports almost anywhere when it comes to the majors. You can laugh, but if you listen to some of the guys that do sports for Barstool, they're fans. They're diehard, devoted fans, and I can tell you from experience, there's 100,000 people at least in this country who can be better analysts than 90% of the people that are on television. It used to be, and I never knew this when I played. I never thought about it like this when I played, but ESPN was operating from the notion that, listen, the second you take a stance, I don't care what it is, liberal, conservative, whatever, you alienate 50% of the people. And as a player, I never thought about that, but that's exactly true. In Boston, look at what happened in Boston. If you want to know how politics and liberals work together with sports, if you look at, I was persona non grata after 2004 when I said to go out and vote Bush. People went berserk. Now, fast forward to 2013, 2011, Tim Thomas puts the Bruins on his back in one of the greatest postseason performances ever, carries them to a Stanley Cup, doesn't go to the White House, and he is now Voldemort. He who should not be named here. You had 2 weeks of conversation here because Tom Brady had a Make America Great Again hat in his locker, and that broke out into this enormous discussion. But you know what's even worse now? Look at the New England Patriots. You have some black players on the Patriots who are going to refuse to go to the White House, and the media is going to hold them up as icons. It's become too political. That tradition needs to end. It would be one thing if you'd never seen somebody screw it up, but I've seen people screw it up. But the other thing is, listen, how many intentional walks happen a day in all 16 games? Which you're talking about maybe at most 3 to 4 minutes total. So, I mean, you're not saving any time. That's not something. Listen, as long as television pays baseball billions of dollars, the games are going to be long because baseball will acquiesce to whatever television wants. And for television to get $1 billion back in their money, they have to advertise. They have to sell advertising. And that's fine. No, I don't have a problem with that. But it is what it is. Athletes, I can tell you as a player, we despise being on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Hated it. Because it is a 4-hour game. Even if it's a 2-hour game, it's a 4-hour game. I'm sure there's a bunch of people wearing pink hats who are going to call me a sexist after this, but let's be very clear about something. The strongest person in the world is a man. The fastest person in the world is a man. There is no comparison between almost any women's sport and any men's sport. Men's sports are faster and they're stronger. I'm not putting women down. That's just how we've been made. And so women, here's what I would tell athletes. You get paid what the owners can afford to pay you. That, the owners in baseball always used to say during lockouts, they wanted us to give them a salary cap because they said they couldn't control themselves spending. And look at the women's NBA. Hey, listen, I love women's hockey. Absolutely love it. But there's no chance that America versus Canada men's hockey can be touched from a speed and style perspective by any women's game. And listen, I coach women's softball, which I think is a phenomenal sport. But let's be very clear. There might be 215 people at an Alabama game, or maybe 2,000. And there's going to be 110,000 at the Alabama football game. Parents are always the most unrealistic. And I say that. So I talked to kids on my son's hockey team, and I laid out some numbers for them. I said 4.1 million, 1,500, and I think it was 699. There's 4.1 million amateur hockey players. There's 1,500 NHL contracts, and 600 guys suit up in the NHL every year. There's a real good chance your kid isn't one of them. Listen, you can go to college and get a free scholarship, but also a lot of times the parents want it far more than the kid does. And I try to explain to parents, your son or your daughter is an ex-athlete waiting to happen, because the second they can get out from under your grasp, they'll quit. But they don't love it themselves, they're not going to play. But here's the thing. You know your kids. You know when your kids are happy. You know when your kids aren't happy. And so if your kids are having fun, that's the ultimate, because they'll invest if they're having fun in there. But also you have to look around yourself. If your kid is not the best person on a 20-man Pop Warner team, there's a pretty good chance he's not going to be Adrian Peterson. You have to be able to be honest with yourself. But like, my dad never, ever, ever pushed me to play anything or do anything. The only thing he ever pushed me to do was, if you're going to do something, I want you to work harder and put more effort than anybody else. And that's the way I've been with my kids. I didn't play varsity baseball until I was a senior in high school. Here's a telling sign for you parents out there. If you have to make your kid go practice their sport when there isn't a practice, they're not going to be professional athletes. The kids, you go drive by a park. It's very different these days. But if you drive by a park, I just drove by a park here in Medfield, and there was a young lady out there with 3 soccer balls kicking soccer balls up against a fake goal. That is a potential college player. All the other kids that are home, they don't want it, because there's a difference between like I'd like to be and I want something, and you can tell.